week 11 of the fantasy baseball season, and here's a few hitters I would look to buy low and trade for this week. The first guy's Javier Baez of the Chicago Cubs. So he's been banged up with a little bit of a thumb injury and struggles as well over the last couple weeks here is Baez. But it is a contract season. He was off to a good start earlier in the year, but now the struggles have kicked in on the season for Baez. 15 home runs, 42 RBIs, 33 runs scored, 9 stolen bases, 238 batting average, and a 270 on base. So right there, those ratios aren't great at all. His on base to batting average. So this guy, he only gets on base really by just hitting the baseball. He's not getting hit by pitches. He's not drawing walks, and he's not hitting to fielder choices as well. So the last couple weeks for Baez, it's been abysmal for him. 2 home runs, 6 RBIs, 2 runs scored, a stolen base, a 121 batting average, and a 121 on base. Right here, Baez, it's been tough. Like I mentioned, he's been in and out of the lineup, but right now he's got to get things going, and it just hasn't been the case for him here, and he's definitely been struggling. So the last few games, June 6th at San Francisco, 0 for 4. June 7th, 8th, and 9th at San Diego, he didn't play because of the thumb injury. June 11th versus St. Louis, 0 for 4. June 12th versus St. Louis, 1 for 4 with an RBI. June 13th versus St. Louis, he didn't play. June 14th, he pinched hit versus the Mets, 0 for 1. And June 15th at the Mets, 1 for 4 with a homer and 2 RBIs, but he did strike out 3 times. So right now, Baez, he's having trouble getting contact. He's having trouble getting on base. And right now, with a player in a contract year, who I think he's definitely going to get things going and bust out to get that batting average up. He's too good of a ball player, in my opinion, to be hitting in the 230s this season, even though last season he only hit 203 as well. But right now, the power's still legit. His stolen bases are at a good number, and in my opinion, he can't go anywhere but up from here as Baez. So I think he's a good buy low candidate with the struggles of the last month with the batting average and the power numbers dropping down just a bit here. The next hitter I look to buy low is Wil Myers of the San Diego Padres. So Wil Myers, it's been a decent season for him in the early going, but now the last few weeks it's been a total train wreck. On the season, 6 home runs, 23 RBIs, 19 runs scored, 4 stolen bases, a 243 batting average, and a 320 on base. So last season, Wil Myers, it was a great year with 15 homers, 40 RBIs, and a 288 batting average. But this season, he just can't get things going. And the last couple weeks for him, 8 for 38 he is with no home runs, no RBIs, no runs scored, a 211 batting average, and a 268 on base. So right now, he pretty much has no fantasy value at all if we're just going over the numbers from the last 2 weeks here for Myers. So right now, you don't got to give up anything pretty much at all to get him. And he's even been dropped in 4% of fantasy leagues this week is Myers, with no stats to back him up at all here. So the last few games for him, June 8th versus the Cubs, 0 for 3. June 9th versus the Cubs, 0 for 3. June 11th at the Mets, 1 for 3. June 12th at the Mets, 1 for 3. June 13th at the Mets, 1 for 4. June 14th at the Rockies, 1 for 3. And then at the Rockies, June 15th, he pinched hit and he went 0 for 1. So right now, he's not contributing. He's not bringing anything to the table. And you could give up the minimum or even look on your waiver wire to get Wil Myers on your team. I think he's too talented of a hitter and too good of a ball player not to be producing. And at worst, I think he could get the power numbers up and be a 30 home run hitter when the season's done with a 210 to 220 batting average. But right now, he's just not cutting it at all for fantasy owners. And while he's way down there towards the Mendoza line, it's a perfect week here to go out there and buy Myers low. The next hitter is Juan Soto of the Washington Nationals. So Juan Soto, what a season he had the last couple of years. Well, right now it's been a tough season for the most part, considering how good of a ball player Soto is. So for his standards, 8 home runs, 28 RBIs, 34 runs scored, a stolen base, a 266 batting average only, and a 396 on base. So his numbers across the board are down. The power's taking a slight downward spiral. The RBIs, they're not that great. We know Soto, he missed a week, I believe, early in the year. And over the last couple weeks, the numbers, 3 home runs, 8 RBIs, 7 runs scored, a 209 batting average, and a 350 on base. But the only telling good sign for me is that his on base percentage is still very well here is Juan Soto, close to 400 on the season, and he's still finding ways to score runs and get on base, but the average and the power and the RBIs are definitely down. But I don't see that happening for too much longer with the weather getting warmer, him getting into the groove of things now at about 200 at-bats into the season. This is where good hitters really start to get going after those 200 at-bats. So I think Soto, who obviously was a top 5 pick in most fantasy drafts this season, he's going to break out and he's going to have a good last 3 or 4 months of the year. So right now, while the value is low, it's a time to get him. The last few games for him: June 9th at Tampa, 1 for 4, a homer, 2 RBIs, 3 runs scored. June 11th versus San Francisco, 0 for 3. June 12th versus San Francisco, 0 for 4 with a run. June 13th versus San Francisco, 1 for 4. June 14th versus the Pirates, 1 for 4 with an RBI. And June 15th, 1 for 4 with a run. So right here, Juan Soto, he's not doing much at all here, with only 4 hits in his last 6 ball games. So right now, he's at a .250 rate hitting the ball, and he hasn't hit a home run since June 9th. So right now, I just believe he's going to break out. And if you could get him on a discount, this is the time to do it. The next hit is Kris Bryant of the Chicago Cubs. So Kris Bryant, like his teammate, who I mentioned earlier in the video, Javier Baez, is on a contract season here. And he's had a great year so far, is Bryant. He's been banged up a little bit with a hand injury. So on the season, 13 home runs, 39 RBIs, 3 stolen bases, 40 runs scored, a .292 batting average, and a .374 on base. So many people thought Kris Bryant was finished coming into this season after the poor 2020 season with 4 home runs and 11 RBIs with a .206 batting average. But this season, he's been great. But the last couple weeks, his numbers have totally taken a hit though. 1 home run, 3 RBIs, 4 runs scored, a .162 batting average, and a .244 on base percentage here for Kris Bryant. But Bryant, like I mentioned, it's a contract year. This Cub team, they've been playing pretty surprising baseball most of the season here. And Kris Bryant, he's going to get things going once again, once his hand's 100% healed, I believe. And right now, while he's down in the dumps, that batting average and his power and RBI numbers, this is a perfect time to go out there and grab him, because we saw what he was capable of the first 7 or 8 weeks of the season here for the Cub team and fantasy owners. And right now, I think he's going to bounce back. The last few games for him: June 11th versus the St. Louis Cardinals, 0 for 4. June 12th versus St. Louis, 0 for 2 with an RBI. June 13th, 1 for 4 versus St. Louis. June 14th at the Mets, 0 for 4. And then he pinched hit versus the Mets June 15th, and he drew a walk in that game. So right now, he's just got to get back into the lineup. He's just got to refocus a little, and I think he'll be fine as Kris Bryant. And also, he's very versatile in fantasy, qualifying at first, third, and outfield. So right now, if I could get him on my team at a little bit of a discount, because what's been going on the last couple weeks with him, this is the time to do it. In the 5th and final hitter, I would look to buy low and trade for is Trevor Story of the Colorado Rockies. As Trevor Story was a first-round, early second-round pick coming into the season in fantasy drafts, and so far it's been a train wreck here for Story, according to where he got drafted. 5 home runs, 24 RBIs, 29 runs scored, 9 stolen bases, a .245 batting average, and a .322 on base percentage. So right here, it's been an abysmal year for Story, and the last couple weeks haven't been any better. No home runs, 1 RBI, 1 stolen base, 3 runs scored, a .150 batting average, and a .320 on base. So right here, Trevor Story, if I was a Story owner, I'd be pretty pissed off about what he's been doing there at the plate. He's not producing, he's not getting hits, he's not driving runs in, and he's another player as well on a contract season, but he might get a 1 or 2 year deal if he continues to struggle this way. And with Nolan Arenado not there anymore in Colorado, it's definitely taking an effect on Trevor Story and the lineup. The last few games for him: June 10th at Miami, 1 for 3 with a run. June 11th at the Reds, 0 for 4. June 12th at the Reds, 0 for 3. June 13th at the Reds, 0 for 4 with 4 strikeouts and a stolen base. June 14th versus San Diego, 1 for 4 with an RBI. June 15th, 1 for 2 with 2 runs versus San Diego. So right now, he's not producing, but I think he could turn things around as well here, his Story. He plays in a division where there's a lot of great weather, a lot of mediocre pitching rosters in the NL West, besides maybe the Dodgers and the Padres. But besides that, I think Story could get things going. And plus, he's playing for that big $200 million contract this offseason. So right now, he's going to have to right the ship a little. And right now, while you don't have to give up much to get him, you can find a free agent on your waiver wire with the same type of numbers. This is the time to go and get him, in my opinion, before he could potentially break out soon. So that's a few hitters I would look to buy low and trade for here in week 11 of the fantasy baseball season.